we got a good night rest. We didn't go to church that morning, so we kind of slept in a little bit, and then we knew no matter what, we were going to go see my mom. I was wanting to actually skip church to go see her, but we ended up sleeping a little bit longer than we wanted to, and we ended up getting there the same time Dad did, after church, around noon. And what I saw when I walked in was she had just woken up from a nap, and she was bug-eyed. Her eyes were wide open. You know that feeling you get whenever you wake up from a really good sleep, a really deep sleep? You are confused. You don't know what's going on. You don't know where you are. And, you just need a few minutes to, understand what's going on. That's what I felt like was happening with my mom at that time. She was looking at me like she didn't know who I was, and she was, really wide-eyed, and it just took a few minutes for her to understand what was going on. And I saw she saw Natalie. I made sure she saw Natalie, and she smiled, and that kind of snapped her out of it, I think, seeing Natalie. And I remember I made our very first family Christmas cards that I was going to send out to everyone. Made sure she had a copy, and I remember her saying, "Oh, how cool." She wasn't talking, but she managed to say that. And so I thought that was kind of sweet. So we went out for lunch, and normally she likes to be in the dining room so that everyone can see Natalie and so that she could see people, and she just likes to be involved and social like that. Me, I like my privacy whenever we go there. I like to be in the activity room where the door is shut and we can have our privacy. And so I was kind of surprised when they immediately took us to the activity room, because that's just not what we did normally. But I was happy about it. I wasn't going to argue. And so we were in the activity room with the door shut, and Mom just seemed, it was very awkward. It was weird, because Mom did not seem herself. We all knew she wasn't herself. She wasn't talking. She did manage to ask Luke and I why we didn't go to church that day. She wasn't talking unless she absolutely had to. She wasn't eating. She had stopped eating that day. I guess the day before, which was a Saturday, was the Christmas parade. And they always have a fellowship chili fest right before the parade. And Mom and Dad would always go to that together. Well, of course, Mom couldn't go to that day. And so Dad brought her some chili. And she loves chili. That's like her favorite dish is chili. And she ate that like it was going out of style. And that was her last really good meal. Because she didn't eat dinner that night. And then Sunday came, and I'm not sure if she ate breakfast that morning or not. But I know she didn't have lunch, because we got her to take 2 bites of cottage cheese, and that was it. I guess Dad gave her a bite of cottage cheese, and then a little bit later I noticed that she hadn't touched her plate at all. So I tried giving her another bite of cottage cheese, and she took it, but then a few minutes later I noticed that she was falling asleep and it was dripping out of her mouth. She never did swallow it. So I kind of woke her up and said, "Mom, you need to swallow what's in your mouth before you choke on it." And so she ended up swallowing that, and so that was it. I knew I wasn't going to try to shove anything else down her throat. So that was the last I saw her eat. I guess the next day she ended up getting some toast and bacon or something like that, but that was her last really good, actual food. But anyway, back to Sunday. Before she fell asleep, it was all quiet and everything. Natalie was pulling herself up on Grandma's wheelchair, and Mom was very upset that she could not be the grandma to Natalie that she wanted to be. And so she would try to find different ways to connect with Natalie, to get her attention, and to get Natalie to smile at her. And singing "Jesus Loves Me" was the way that she did that. And so every time she saw Natalie, she would sing "Jesus Loves Me" to her. And Natalie would smile really big, and Mom would just love that. You could just see Mom's heart melting. And so when Natalie pulled herself up and she smiled at Grandma, Grandma smiled back at her. I said, "Natalie, if Grandma could talk right now, she would sing you "Jesus Loves Me." I was not trying to hint to Mom. I was not trying to tell her, hey, you need to sing. I wasn't saying that at all. But she tried. She tried singing Jesus Loves Me to Natalie one last time. She didn't make it about halfway through, and then she had to stop. But that was the last time that she tried singing, and so I thought that was really sweet. The last time she tried singing was to Natalie. After we ate and after Mom was starting to fall asleep, Luke wanted to go to the gym that day. And Dad needed to go home to rest, to, change out of his church clothes and, get freshened up and everything. And I could not leave Mom. I just couldn't. I just had this feeling in my gut, I think all of us did, that we just can't leave Mom. And so Luke took Natalie to back into town so that his mom can watch her. And Dad went home and I stayed with Mom. So I wheeled Mom back to the room and she was already asleep before we even got to her room. When we got into her room, I pushed her call light immediately because I wanted them to put her in her chair so that she could, sleep comfortably in her chair. And so they came in a few minutes later and she was passed out asleep. And I, said I wasn't sure if we should move her or not. I mean, she's really sleeping good right now, so I don't know. And they said, well, you know what? She doesn't sleep very well. She's not sleeping at night, so I think we should just leave her alone. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. So that was, I guess the first day I was alone with Mom. I just knew we couldn't leave her. And so that was the first time that Dad and I took our shifts on watching Mom. And so I took the first shift, I guess. We didn't know what was happening at that time, of course, because at that time, Dad still had to go back to work on Monday. And so he was still planning on leaving her that night to go and get some sleep, to get up early to go to work. Not that we felt comfortable with that at all, but you gotta do what you gotta do. We don't know what's going on. And so we just knew we had to continue with life. But I just felt really weird, being in that room watching TV with Mom passed out asleep like that. I just had the weirdest feeling and I just knew something was wrong. Something wasn't right. And several hours went by. She had a few visitors, but they didn't stay for too long, and she had no idea that they were there. And so finally, after a few hours went by, one of the nurses came in to check on her. And I asked her, I'm like, should we move her to, so that she's more comfortable? Because she's been in that chair for a long time. She has to be getting sore because she's, sleeping like this. And so they're like, oh yeah, we can move her. We need to move her. So they moved her into the chair. They woke her up a little bit to do that. Not that they needed to wake her up, but I guess they wanted to, just to make sure she's okay, for one thing. When they put her in her chair, they put her BiPAP on immediately. And then after Dad got there, after she had had her BiPAP on for a while, they checked her vitals and they checked her temperature, her blood pressure, her oxygen level, and that's when they saw that the oxygen level was really low. And so they took the BiPAP off and then they put the oxygen on. They decided to call the hospice nurse because her oxygen levels were really low, and they just wanted to make sure that the hospice nurse knew what was going on. And so they called the hospice nurse in to check her out, to, give her opinion on what's going on and what's happening. Dad was wanting to wait for them to get there, but because he had been there since 6 o'clock for dinner, but of course she wasn't going to go out for dinner, and so we kind of just skipped dinner. They gave me a sandwich though because I was starving and I didn't want to leave. I just can't remember exactly when Dad, left, but I know he left. He went home because it was getting late. They didn't know when the hospice nurse was going to be there. Dad needed to go home to get some sleep. So he said goodbye to Mom. He gave her a kiss and then he left for the night. This was around 9 o'clock or something like that, and the hospice nurse wasn't supposed to be there until like 10 or 11. And Dad just couldn't do that. He wanted to, but he couldn't. And I completely understand. Dad was going through a lot at that time. When the hospice nurse got there, the hospice nurse checked her vitals and everything. And Her vitals were good. The oxygen level was up where it was supposed to be. She woke Mom up to try to talk to her, and this is when things got scary. Even though her oxygen level was up where it was supposed to be, I think it still messed her up a little bit, and she woke up very confused. She had been sleeping all afternoon and most of the evening, and so when she woke up, she looked at the nurse like she didn't know who she was, and like she was confused about what was going on. Just like she looked at me earlier that day. Made her look at me so that she wouldn't be afraid. She tried talking. She opened up her mouth. You could tell she was talking, but nothing was coming out. She couldn't talk. And she just kept trying to say the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. And I kept hearing, we were both patient, we were both in her face, we were both trying to listen to her. And finally she started to get some sound coming out, and we still couldn't hear it though. And so she kept saying it, and eventually her voice was strong enough so that we could barely hear. She was saying, call me, call me, call me. And I knew I wasn't hearing her right. I'm like, what is she saying? Is she saying call me? Mom, are you saying call me? What do you mean call me? It didn't make any sense. And so we kept asking her what she means, and she just kept saying the same thing, call me, call me, call me. And I kept telling the nurse, that's not her. That's not her. She's never done this before. This is the first time that this nurse has come in to see her. This is a nurse that was on call, so she doesn't know Mom. She didn't know who Mom was before. And so when she came in and Mom woke up and started doing that, I was just scared that, this nurse thought, oh, this is normal for her. And I didn't want her to think that. I'm like, no, this is not normal for her. This is not who she is. Something's wrong. Fix it. That's basically what I was trying to say. Fix it. But she couldn't, obviously. She had no idea what was happening. Well, I guess, she knew that the oxygen level was really low earlier, and so that was, probably what was going on. We had just calmed her down enough so that she wasn't, panicking like she was. And Luke got there finally. And when Luke got there, she started kind of panicking again, and he was saying, call me, call me, call me. And I didn't know what to think. I was so scared. I tried not to freak out, but how can you not when something like that is happening to your mom? They gave her some morphine and some anxiety medicine, or I don't know what it was exactly that they gave her, but they gave her something to calm her down because she was freaking out. And eventually Mom said, call Phil. And I felt awful because Dad was already so physically and emotionally drained that he needed his sleep, and he had to work the next morning. And so I felt awful that she was wanting him, but I knew we couldn't deny her to see Phil, to see her husband. And so Luke called Dad, and Dad had just gotten ready for bed. I'm not sure if he was in bed yet, but he was pretty close. So he's like, all right, I'll be right there. And Luke said he sounded tired and distressed, and that's normal. So once Dad got there, Dad and I think both had the same thing in our minds. You can't go to work tomorrow. You have to call in. You can't go to work tomorrow. You have to be here with your wife. And he knew that. And so he called in right away and said, I'm not going to be there. My wife has taken a turn for the worst, and I just can't leave her. And so, they knew what was going on. They knew that the time was coming soon. And so when they got that phone call, they were prepared for it.